We're going to do a forced regen on Wes's truck. We did an EGR tune-up already. It was pretty bad, and we're just now getting to where we're connecting with Insite. I got Insite loaded up here, and we're going to go ahead and disconnect here, and I'll reconnect, show you what's going on here. Okay, I chose my Inline 5 USB. I'm connected to the truck with the adapter. Got the little lights blinking. So I'm going to connect to his ECM. And he's got a bunch of fault codes from when he had problems before his EGR tune-up and everything. We haven't cleared those. And he says he doesn't want them cleared for now, so we'll leave them alone. But I'll show some of those typical fault codes. EGR valve out of calibration. His EGR valve was clogged up very, very bad. We cleaned it, pretty much rebuilt it, got it working again. You know, he's got all these exhaust, gas temperature, DPF alarms, yada yada. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to go into how to do a forced regen. One thing I like to do though is if you go to the diagnostic test and you go to after treatment diesel filter regeneration, which I think is the first option on this software, and you hit next, you see some stuff here. And I don't know if people watching this might be already familiar with doing a forced regen, might want to know this if they don't. But if you're not familiar with it, I'll describe this briefly. You've got after treatment injector status. Well, when you do a forced regen, you start this thing. The engine has to be warmed up, obviously, all the way. The engine has to be running and idling. Make sure you're not parked under a tree. Make sure it's able to do a regen. You're not going to catch something on fire, where the exhaust stack gets real hot, or near some weeds or bushes or anything, And, just read all the warnings and cautions before you actually do this. But I want to touch on some things here. When you do a regen on the ISX 871 with this software, take note of the time that you started the regen. Because what's going to happen is it's going to take 40 minutes. And the first 10 minutes, it's going to load up the engine. It's going to put the engine under a load. It's going to spool up the turbo. It's going to do a bunch of things. It's going to try to get the DOC inlet temperature up around 580, 600 degrees. And it does this based on preset programming. I don't think it does it based on sensors. It just sort of runs through a preset cycles. So it's going to take 10 minutes to do that. And then once that 10 minutes is up, you'll see this after treatment injector start to fire. This value will go from off to on, and then it'll go on, then it'll shut off, then it'll go on, it'll shut off, then it'll come on and stay on. Well, after that first 10 minutes and that thing comes on, what you really want to watch for is this filter, DPF filter intake temperature. It should be sitting somewhere around 580, 600-ish, roughly in that area, along with the DOC inlet, and the DPF outlet temperature should be close to that. Well, when that thing kicks on, if your doser injector is good, you've got a new one on there. We didn't replace his, we cleaned it, but it was fairly new, his was. So I didn't justify replacing it because it still looked fairly new, and it wasn't really clogged up that much. Somebody had done some work on it or something. So we cleaned it, so we're going to find out if it's any good or not. It should only take 2 or 3 or 4, maximum about 4 or 5 minutes for this thing to reach, 980, 990, 1,000 degrees, 1,100 degrees. If it takes longer than 3 or 4 minutes, 5 at the most, either you've got an exhaust leak in your exhaust flex pipe, or you've got something wrong with your turbo, or there's still something wrong with the motor. If it takes like 10 minutes to get up to temperature, you've got some serious problems. This thing is not going to regen on its own very well going down the road. So that's one indicator how healthy the regen system is on this, is how fast this temperature will climb from, 580, 600 up to 1,000 after this kicks on. So, you got 10 minutes, this thing kicks on, and then 2 or 3 minutes after that, 12, 13, 14 minutes into it, this thing should be reaching 900 to 1,000 degrees. And then slowly this one will climb. That's the outlet temperature, the final exhaust temperature coming out of the stack. That one will slowly climb as it cleans the DPF out and the fuel burns through it. The catalyst intake temperature should stay around 580, 600 the whole time. And it should not climb. If you see this one climb instead of this one, either you have a face plug DOC, which is actually face plug and not the cry home to baby mama alarm, You know, you get DOC face plug alarms on this engine, like notoriously, whether it's face plugged or not. So you have to kind of ignore the error and just know that there's something wrong. But if you actually see this one climb instead of this one, well, the fuel's igniting on the front of the DOC. It shouldn't do that. And so that's an indicator that you got something serious wrong. And I've seen a few of these trucks, I don't know why or how it happens, but this temperature sensor and that temperature sensor down there on the DPF and DOC itself, sometimes the connectors get swapped. And you gotta, you know, so if you see this one go up instead of that one, this one's sitting at 600 the whole time, this one starts going up to 900, 1,000, either those connectors are swapped or you got some serious problems. So, you know, keep an eye out for that. This one is the only one that should go to 1,000 first, and then this one will slowly climb afterwards. That's the outlet. And then this one should stay relatively low, you know, 500-600 degrees. But, you know, that's all great information, and that's wonderful stuff to watch while you're doing this 40-minute regen. But it's really doesn't tell you a whole lot of other things. It's pretty much it. This status window down here pretty much just flashes and stays blank. It doesn't really tell you much. Everything down here is pretty useless during the process. Everything up here is just instructions. It's great to see before you do the process, you know, and watch it, you know, and read through it once. But, you know, while you're doing this, you can actually do other things. And a lot of mechanics, I don't know if they don't know this or not, or if they just don't bother. And a lot of drivers that have the Insite software may not know this. So I'm going to show you a couple of tricks to actually get some more information out of this process to kind of give you an idea what actually might be going on during your regen. So I'm going to close this window for now, and I'm going to show you how to set this up so you can actually monitor more than just those parameters. It's kind of cool.